Dr. Maria Rosario Jackson, Chair of the NEA. Great to have you here with us on the American Black Journal.
This is such an honor to be with you this morning.
Yeah. So you are coming to Detroit to visit and to have a conversation with Neil Barclay, who runs the Wright Museum of African American History. Talk about what you'll talk with Neil about and what you're up to at the NEA.
So I think we're going to have a really good conversation about the importance of the arts in people's lives, the importance of museums, particularly museums like the Wright Museum. I'm hoping to share what I'm up to as chair of the National Endowment for the Arts, as well as hear from Neil about the work that's happening in Detroit at the Wright Museum. So I'm very excited about the conversation.
Yeah. So tell us what you are up to at the NEA. Really important institution in terms of, I feel like, girding the arts, maybe is the phrase that I would say. Making sure that this is perpetuated and made available, accessible to so many different people and to places where without the NEA, you might not have the same kind of awareness and access to the fine arts.
Well, certainly accessibility is a really important part of what I'm committed to in this role as leader of the organization. There's a concept that I've been promoting that has to do with making the arts part of our everyday lived experience. And I talk about artful lives and our intention to make sure that everyone in the country has an opportunity to have art in their lives. And it's an elastic notion from my perspective, which includes the things that people usually think about, which might be going to a museum or a concert or seeing a play. I think it also includes, though, everyday lived experience and practice in actively creating art at whatever level. So whether it's making, doing, teaching, learning, the aesthetic qualities of being in family, being in community, those are all really important. So it's an elastic definition that I think has a lot of on-ramps for people to nurture their creative side and be expressive as full humans.
Yeah. So when I think about my own early exposure to the arts and things that made me love art and music and museums and all of the things you were just talking about, there are a couple of spaces that come to mind. Of course, school, after school, right? After school programming, which was a really big deal when I was a kid in the latchkey era. And then I think of summer programming through rec centers and other things that my parents made sure I participated in. And if you think of those two things, or all of those things, a lot of them don't exist in the abundance that they did when I was a kid. Some of them don't really exist at all, and the ones that are left are under real threat. I mean, we have a real struggle right here in the city of Detroit to make sure that the arts are part of the public school system. I mean, that's not a given anymore. I imagine that from your chair, some of what you're dealing with is just the retraction of opportunity, the diminishment of that opportunity for people to become fans of the arts in the way they used to.
I think that there's the trends that you point to are on point in many places. I also feel like there's a lot of opportunity right now to think more expansively about the role of the arts at the intersection of other fields. You mentioned education.
Right.
I certainly think about education. I also think about health and community development and how the arts are imperative to do well in any of those fields. I mean, I personally think that the arts are often a precondition for so many of the things that we say we aspire to as a nation of opportunity and justice. We just can't achieve it without figuring out how to integrate arts, culture, and design into so many facets of our lives, so many different areas of policy and practice. So I'm very interested and excited about the opportunity to more intentionally look at the connection, say, between arts and health and well-being, or arts and how we think of healthy communities, how we continue to develop communities in ways where all people can thrive. I think the arts are central to that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little about you and your background and what brings you to this position. It is a milestone, an important milestone, the fact that you're sitting in the seat you are.
Well, I mean, it's been a journey that has a through line. And I think the through line is that I really do believe that the arts are critical to building healthy communities where all people can thrive. And you know, my commitment to the arts started early, and it started at home. And it wasn't because my parents were artists or benefactors or collectors or anything like that. But I think that my parents resorted to the arts as a way to help my brother and me understand who we were and where we came from. I think they also looked to the arts as a way to make sure that we were proud of the cultures that we came from, that we knew that we were connected to people who were capable of genius. And that was really important to them. And not to just know it intellectually, but to feel it. So, which is, you know, what happens through the arts when we get to express our full humanity. So I think awareness that the arts are essential to expressing that full humanity, to reclaiming that full humanity. I think that that has always informed my understanding of the kinds of cities and towns and communities that I want to participate in helping to build. So my professional training is in urban planning.
Right.
But in all of that, I don't see the arts as separate from that. I see it as essential and perhaps too often not considered enough, but essential and certainly inadequate without the inclusion of arts, culture, and design.
Yeah. And just saying that right now, I think has a different resonance than it would have 5 or 10 or 15 years ago. You think about not just the things I was talking about, which is the difficulty maintaining the infrastructure for the arts, but the attacks on the arts, the idea that there are people who feel like this is extra or unneeded. You're making the case, the opposite case, that this is bedrock of the idea of building and maintaining community.
I believe that to my core. And I know that there are many ways of valuing the arts, as there should be. In the past, I think we have typically defaulted to economic impact arguments, which are still valid and important. I think, though, that in addition to understanding the value of the arts through an economic lens, we also have to take a look at social fabric, at, again, health and well-being. And I'm encouraged that in the public health field, there's evidence of a broader prism in understanding what it is that we need to pay attention to in order to understand health. So as the public health field looks at environmental and social determinants of health outcomes, we start to worry about things like isolation and belonging and these other things that I think that the arts certainly contribute to, right? Our sense of connection, our ability to be expressive. All of these things are really important, and we ignore them at our own peril. I've in parts of my career, I've focused on evaluation and research, and I've been led and have been on teams where we're doing theories of change, and we're trying to understand how things work and how things happen. And one of the things that's often left out is precisely the kind of activity that has to happen in order for us to be available to new ways of thinking, right? And that requires engaging head, heart, and hand, intellectually, emotionally, physically, which the arts allow us to do. It requires seeing things from different perspectives, being curious. And we don't often think of that as an intentional part of what we need to get unstuck as a society. And to actually advance in the ways that we say we want to advance. And I think that the arts are critically important, essential to that. And we won't get unstuck until we figure out how to address the full humanity of all of us, and to be curious and empathetic, and to consider different ways of knowing, different ways of being, and different ways of working.
Well, we are really pleased that you are in the chair that you're in, and really excited that you're going to come talk with us here in Detroit. Thanks, of course, for joining us here on American Black Journal.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to being there.
Yeah.